She's working.
Looks
There
like
we go.
it to me.
Recording to the cloud.
Excellent. Well done. Well, thank you, gentlemen, and good luck, everybody. I'm going to close my window here and step away.
Yeah, me too.
Cool. Hello, everyone. Future certified landscape inspectors. Just to give you guys a little background on myself, I have a master's degree in landscape architecture. I am an ISA certified arborist, landscape inspector, or landscape certified inspector with LIAF, vice president, like Kevin said. I work at Dixie Landscape currently as a project manager. I worked there first for a year and a half as an estimator, looking at plans day in, day out, doing takeoffs, doing estimates, and now I'm a project manager out on the field. So I'm gonna show you guys, I'm gonna share my screen and show you guys a full set of plans on a project I'm currently working at. And I'm gonna kind of show you guys walk you through the progress of construction and the order that you would look at a set of plans. I have 2 dogs, so if they bark or you hear any noise, I apologize. The chat room, the chat is open. So as I'm sharing my screen, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. If not, I'll stop at certain points and ask you guys if you have any questions.
Not unless he unmutes you.
Yep.
You really good. You have to be bigger. Oh, he just okay.
Alrighty, so I'm sharing my screen. I hope everyone can see it. And now this is a job in Pompano Beach. This is a TD sheet. So if you don't know what a TD sheet is, I'll zoom in here. It stands for Tree Disposition Plan. You'll always find on the right-hand side or on the bottom, depending on the architect, what you're looking at. So this is a tree disposition plan, the date, project number, TD1. It should show you the job name, the address, the location, the set of plans. Give me 1 second. It should show you the set of plans you're looking at, and there should always be a column for revisions, sealed. If you're a landscape inspector, plan reviewer, you should want to make sure that it's sealed by the landscape architect. If it's not sealed, it's like an immediate rejection. Anyway, so looking at a tree disposition plan, you should have a key. That is what every disposition plan has. There's 3 things that all landscape plans have, and these are the most important. There's a key, there's a scale, and a north arrow. 3, every page should have it. If they don't, you'll be completely lost as to where you are, how far things are, and where and what you're looking at. So for instance, this tree disposition plan, there's 3 things you can do with trees. They can remain, they can be relocated, or they can be removed. Your scale factor on this plan is a 1 to 30 inch scale. Now on a PDF, you know, it looks, you can't really tell if that's right, but when you print this out to the size, you could always get a scale bar, and if it's 1 inch equals 30, you go to the 30 scale, and that measurement right here should actually equal 1 inch. And then north is up. So when you're on the job site, you know north is up. Architects always put notes: all invasive plants found on site are to be removed. Invasive Florida holly and southwest corner of the property are to be removed. And then here you start your inventory of trees. Each tree is numbered. Each tree falls under the index of what's going to happen. So just to recap, looks like nothing around the dot is to remain, double circles to be relocated, and an X is to be removed. So as you can see, all these trees, 85, 86, 733, 34, these are all to be removed. And that way you can see here's a nice big cluster of trees. Relocate, 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 remove. And each number will tell you what the tree is and what is going to happen to it. At the end of your tree disposition plan, so there should be multiple pages of it, the last page should show you the list of trees. So here's a pretty big size project, pretty big list. 102 bottle brush, or sorry, just another one, 451 sable palmetto. So here you can essentially go down the list, see what is going to happen to it, see the comment by the arborist, the species rating, the appraised value. All this is necessary for when you're doing plan review. Here you can see some details that the architect chose to put, root pruning details. Here they're telling you they want the depth and the width of the trench may vary. All roots must be trimmed. Root pruned out to the drip line, varies with tree size. Here you have a tree protection detail. So every city has their own details that they want their protection. This one wants safety barrier fence, fluorescent orange. They want it 2x4 pressure treated. Here you can see they want 2 feet buried under the ground with 4 foot minimum above ground on 4 foot centers. So here they're telling you exactly how they want their tree protection to be. And this is directly pulled from the city of Pompano. Moving on, when you're doing a plan review, if you end up doing this in a city, you can almost always skip to the last page where they have to provide you with a chart. So here, their chart's very simple. Total trees to remain, 564. Total trees to be relocated, 96. Total to be removed, 117. Existing and proposed trees exceed the number of required trees for the site. No mitigation is required. So they're telling you that they've gone above and beyond the requirements of the site for what's to remain. And they're telling you we don't have to mitigate for anything. Does anyone have any questions on a disposition plan so far? I lost the chat room.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
No, I have no questions. I didn't know if you could hear me.
Oh, yep. Anyone have any questions? No? Moving on. Just typical tree disposition plan. What you guys will look for, some disposition plans will show you the new location of all the trees to be relocated. Some of them don't. This one, for example, probably because there's so many things being relocated, they don't show you the exact locations. If they don't show it on the disposition plan, it's because they're going to eventually show it to you on the landscape plan. So from here, we will go to the landscape plan. So here you have landscape plan, cover page. As we said before, here's the seal. You could see the landscape plan is on revision 2 due to comments. Scale bar, north arrow, 811, release date, plan. Here it's just telling you this plan is divided into 3 sheets, LP1, LP2, LP3. This is where the cut lines are going to be. So this is just your essential cover page. Now I'm going to skip to the last page real quick. So here's the last page, and typically you'll find the plant list on the last page of the landscape plan. So here you can see their plant list, right? It'll always be broken out into trees, then palm trees, shrubs. Usually you'll have ground covers and then sod. Here you can see the code that they'll be represented on in the plan, the quantity of them, botanical name, common name, how they want the tree. So do they want the tree in a container? Do they want it field grown? Here it can range from field grown, Baldwin burlap. It can be 65 gallon, 200 gallon, 25 gallon, 35 gallon. This is where they're gonna specify how they want the trees to be grown. Here you can also see QVR 9 shows you 9 oak trees that are gonna be relocated. So following up from the tree disposition plan, if the oak says QVR on it, you know that it's relocated from the tree disposition plan. Same thing with the mahoganies. SPR is 80, so it's 80 sable palms that are going to be relocated. And then here you have your shrubs. Container. So right here in container, same thing. You'd have 3 gallon, 7 gallon, 1 gallon, 15 gallon. The architect here has chosen to not put any gallon size, but they have spec'd out a height size. So you'll look at cocoa plum, Chrysobelanus akako. They want it 24-inch height by 24-inch spread, and they want it planted 24 inches off center. So when you look at, and we'll look at the landscape details after, but they're gonna want these spaced every 2 feet on center. Clusia 30-inch, 24-inch. So as an estimator or a project manager or anyone, when you see a 30-inch Clusia, you know that's not gonna happen as a 3 gallon. You maybe even that as a 7 gallon. So this is where you, from your experience or from doing a quick search, I like to use Plandant. You can search what nurseries are growing and what their stock is at. And if you're gonna have to bid it as a 15 gallon or a 10 gallon to get that 30-inch height. Because most cities, especially Pompano, Sunrise, Plantation, they'll take out a tape measure and they'll measure your shrubs. And if your shrubs don't have that 30-inch height or that 24-inch spread, you're gonna have to take back all the shrubs you just delivered. So this goes for the entire plant list, size of trees. We'll go over some quick common. So here we go, size of tree. We have a 14-foot height by 5-foot spread, 5-foot CT. CT stands for clear trunk. So they want 5 feet of trunk before the first branch comes out, single leader. Here's another 14 to 16-foot height, 5-foot spread, 2.5-inch caliper, 2.5-inch. STD refers to standard. So you could have a multi or you could have a standard. This is just a zoom out a little bit. It's a silver buttonwood. So you could grow silver buttonwood as a bush. You could grow it as a tree. By putting STD, they're specifying they want it grown as a tree, a standard tree. Same thing with the Alex Cassina, the Hoon Holly. Here we have a crepe myrtle, multi-trunk, multi-stem, 10 to 12 foot overall multi-stem. What does multi-stem mean? The landscape architect here hasn't put in how many stems they want. So could a 2-stem crepe myrtle pass in this instance? It sure can, because it's multi-stemmed. Some architects will specify they want 3 to 5, 5 to 7. Here they've just put multi-stem. Live oak, 16-foot overall, 8-foot clear trunk, single leader. So here you go. This is their plant list, their specifications. Down here, this is the information that the landscape architect provides to the city in order to speed up and expedite their plan review. So when they submit plans to a plan reviewer, you want to lay out all the information that that plan reviewer needs. So he just has to go down the list and say, okay, check, 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 check. They met all our codes and everything's good to go. So here you can see landscape calculations. Here they tell you the zoning. So this is important. What zoning? Is it single family, multifamily, industrial, commercial? Each zoning in your city will have a separate code with separate requirements and separate trees and calculations that you'll need to provide. So here they're letting you know the gross site area. So the site's 24 acres. The previous site was 16. It's increased by 7. Open space pervious area. So this is, they need to provide you a minimum of 20% of the gross site. So they're letting you know the minimum is 210,000 square feet they need to provide. They've provided you with 398,000. So as a plan reviewer, you know, you're saying, all right, you're going down the list, checking things off. Total impervious area. Here they're letting you know the square footage. Vehicular use area, minimum 15% has to be vehicular use. Here they're telling you, you know, you're requiring 80,000. We're providing you with 97. This is the more important part. Minimum development site landscaping. So here's the table that is provided by the city. So as a landscape architect, if I'm working in Sunrise, I'm going to go look at their city requirements and see what they want. Here's my site size, 1 million square foot site divided by 3,000. I need to provide you with 350 trees. How much are they giving you? 350 trees. There's 172 existing, 147 proposed, 9 relocates, and 22 palms, which count as 3 palms equals 1 tree. So here, again, they're running down the list of telling you this is what you're requiring, this is what we're providing, and this is, approve our plan, basically. Here, a common thing you'll see is when a revision happens. Typically, revisions will happen when plans get rejected from a city. So here you can see it looks like maybe they had a change to their shrubs because this is revision 1. So here's 1 million square feet divided by 3,000. For each tree, they need to have 5 shrubs. They need to have 1,751 shrubs, and they're providing you with 3,037. More things, canopy trees per every 40 foot of linear feet in the perimeter. They need 50 trees, they're providing you with 50. They need, on the east side, you need 14, they're providing you 14. The west side, you need 11, they're providing you 11. So here, they run down the list. Again, the more you break it out and the more the architect makes it easier for a plan reviewer to see it and know that they're meeting all the requirements, the faster this plan will get reviewed and the easier it'll be going forward. So here you can go down, we're not going to go down the whole thing, but just for example, building base, required shrubs planted within 3 feet of the base of the building. Required shrubs shall maintain a max average off-center spacing of 6 foot. They're letting you know, we did it at 3. Total trees required, 616. We're providing 754. So here they're letting you know, we're meeting all your requirements. Please pass our plan. Here's some more notes. All dead or declining plant material from previous phases shall be replaced. These are notes that are always good to have. You always have to read them. For instance, this job is phased out, so all landscaping shall be installed as part of phase 1 with the exception of the landscape island. So they're letting you know we're trying to phase this project out. So here is the 1 page of the plan. I'll go, here's some more details. So each city, again, has their own details. Here is Urban Forestry City of Pompano Beach. For single trees, less than 4 inches of caliper, this is how they want it staked out. They want the root ball shall be placed at the bottom, 3 inches below grade and tied wooden stakes, clean backfill. Here they're letting you know exactly how they want everything planted. Single tree trunk greater than 4-inch caliper. The root ball shall be placed at the bottom, undisturbed subgrade. So here you go, detail by detail. How do they want these trees staked? How do they want them planted? What do they want with their relocations? Around, let's see, what is this? Plant hedge material around all grown monument equipment. Typical for all FPL transformer boxes or pads, telephone and cable boxes, sanitary lift station, irrigation pumps. So here they're letting you know the screening around all the utilities. 2 foot offset off the utility, planted around 3-inch approved recycled mulch. They're letting you know what kind of mulch they want. 3-inch mulch as specified. Watered in, clean backfill, 6 inches around all the shrubs. Here's a palm. Here's shrub spacing, ground cover spacing as per plan schedule. That's what OC stands for, off center. What's the distance between the center of this shrub and the center of this shrub? Spread 3 inches of mulch. Here they let you know they want it alternate spaced. Here's around a fire hydrant. So if you guys have a question that says, how far off a fire hydrant do shrubs need to be placed? Go to the detail page. Look at exactly, find the detail for the hydrant. Right here, it's letting you know 7 foot 6 inches from all working sides and 3 foot 6 inches from rear. Sod only in these areas. If and this has happened to me multiple times. The plan doesn't have a detail like this. We go out there and plant shrubs all around a fire hydrant. and the fire department shows up and makes you rip it all out because, you know, that they have rules too. Here's a tree protection detail. Here's some more buffer details, continuous hedge installed and maintain that 5-foot height. So you can have 4 or 5, as many different pages of details. We're not going to go over all of them. Just know that if you do need to find a detail, go back. They're usually at the back of the landscape plan. So just going now, we'll look at a landscape plan. Let's look at a good part. So here you go. Here is a nice piece around this retention that's going to be completely planted. So here we have 6 CES, 13 SPR, 3 CES, 3 SP, SMR1, SM1. Here, SPR. So let's look at SPR. SPR is 80, sable palmetto, cabbage palmetto, relocated. So they're letting you know right here, we want 13 relocated sables, and they've let you know the numbers. Oh, sorry. Hold on. They've let you know the numbers of the sable palms from the tree disposition plan that they want planted there. So if you refer back to the tree disposition plan, you have to go find palm 618, 619, 620, 621, 622, all the way to 32, and realize that you have to plant them here. Same with SMR. What's SMR? You go to your plant list, SMR, Swietenia mahogany, mahogany, relocated. Here they want number 88 mahogany relocated to this spot, and so on and so forth. Landscape plans differ from architect to architect. So this one right here has, let's see, they have trees and they have shrubs all in one plan. So right here we have CIR 192. You find the arrow, looks like it's pointing at that hedge line. What does CIR mean? Go back to your plant list, CIR, Chrysobanalus akako red tip, it's cocoa plum. So you know from here, going all the way down, you have 192 cocoa plum. Landscape plants are not always the easiest to plant or to read. There's a lot of information on them. You always want to refer back to your scale bar and your north arrow. When you're planting these trees, the spacing of these trees is intentional. So when you're on site, you take out your scale bar. You see it's 1 to 30. You put the 0 right here. You measure to here. Looks like it's 10 feet. So now you know every tree, and you measure each tree is planted 10 foot off center. Landscape plans also will show you, let's see if I can find one. They'll show you utilities. They'll show you overhead lines. They'll show you easements. They'll show you everything that you shouldn't be planting in. So let's see if I can find one here. Right here. So here you go. This strip right here in the middle of this project, existing retention area. Why is it a retention area? Railway, ingress, easement, this whole length. So here you know nothing can be planted in this easement. You take out your scale bar, you measure it, looks like it's 60 feet. You have a 60-foot easement running. You want to look at overhead line. Here you go. O/W, overhead wire. Looks like there's a post here. This is a sign for a post. And you'll see that here you have overhead wires running across this entire strip. So as a landscape plan examiner, if you have overhead wires, well, you know, what's your initial instinct? Well, what are they planting underneath my overhead wires? Because FPL, they have a guideline as to what can be planted. LM and CES. So we go down here. We look CES, silver buttonwood, LM, crepe myrtle multi-trunk. You can pull up FPL's guide for planting under power lines. I'm pretty sure those are both category 3. Crepe myrtle is a category 3 tree. Silver buttonwood might be category 2. So they're all within the guidelines that can be planted underneath overhead wires. And that will, if you don't catch that, I'm sure someone will as a plans examiner. But as a installer out on the field, you definitely don't want to be planting oak trees underneath power lines. I'd hope that we've passed that point in development that we stop planting oak trees underneath. But you'd still be surprised. Let me just go down my list. Yep, so this is a landscape plan. More or less simple. Here you can see existing tree legend, large shade tree to remain, palm to remain. So it looks like most of this parking lot is left untouched. Landscape areas and east parking lot are all existing perimeter buffer. So they're letting you know nothing here is getting moved. There's some new stuff coming in here, new trees along this whole side. SS, this stands for another utility. Not sure off the top of my head, but I'm sure it's something important. Sanitary sewer, probably. So that is a landscape plan.
One sec. Stop it.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead.
Okay, on the, I was just looking at the plants. The the clusias aren't native, and they call them native.
Yep, they call them native.
Only Rosia is native.
Yeah. So as a plans examiner, that would be your job to let them know there's a native requirement that they have to provide you, and I'm sure you could find it on the right here on their chart. I'm sure if you look here, there's a requirement for native plants.
Oh, it's on. I just put the.
So yeah, I mean that's a good catch. As a plans examiner, you'll notice that, and you can correct them and make them do a revision for it. If it's really that important. So here you can see the note: 501 native trees provided. 50% of palms shall be native, 50% of trees, no more than 50% required trees to be palms. So it doesn't look like they have a requirement for the shrubs to be native.
But the clusias were 5 foot, weren't they?
They're, let's see. Yeah, 5 foot overall clusia. So that's a huge, they still have it as a shrub. So I'm sure.
Yeah, they probably on shrubs anyway.
Yeah, they just wanted a huge hedge.
Yeah.
5 foot overall clusia planted 24-inch off center. So that's going to be really tight, a really tight screen.
Yeah, real tight.
But yeah, good catch.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have?
Question?
Yeah, go ahead.
What's the general guideline for the relocated trees? Do they say like 6 weeks root prune in advance, or is that specified by the architect?
That is, cities will have their own requirements, and architects will also specify it. Let's see if we can find one on this document. So yeah, here you go. Root pruning must be done a minimum of 8 weeks prior to relocation.
Okay.
Work must be supervised by an ISA certified arborist. Watering must provide sufficient water to maintain a moist condition in the roots. Typically, you'd find that in a detail. I've always done 6 to 8 weeks, depending on the tree. I'm sure, depending on your city again, if they're stricter or if they're a little bit more lenient. But in a strict city, especially Pompano, they're going to have it documented somewhere on the plan. Because if it's on this plan, they expect the contractor to follow these rules. And if they don't, this is like plain as day. Well, your tree died because you root pruned it and waited 3 weeks, even though you didn't follow the detail on the plans.
Is the root pruning first done with like a small backhoe and then the cuts are cleaned up, or do they do it by hand?
It
Or is
depends on,
that's means and methods, I guess, with the contractor?
that is means and methods. And this, let me see, I saw, usually they'll refer to the ANSI A300 or 3000 book for best practices. The way that I personally do it with my company is we'll take, if they're large trees, we take a mini excavator out and we'll trench around the drip line, and then we'll go back in about, you know, a foot to 6 inches so we can find where the root was damaged with the mini excavator, and then make clean cuts there.
Okay, thank you.
That's how we do it. See, all torn roots must be trimmed with clean, sharp instruments. So yeah, essentially you just, you trench all around it, and then you go back into the part that wasn't damaged, and then you just make a clean cut to it.
I have a question for,
Go ahead.
I don't know if you do this with your company. Prior to actually beginning to remove the trees for relocation, do you actually label them? So that if it's labeled, okay, palm tree 684 is supposed to be moved from the northwest to the southeast corner, you actually know what you're doing? Or is it just kind of, just make it look good?
So I think I've had the luck that I'll show up to a job site for a new job that we just got contracted for, and when I get there, every single tree is tagged with the little aluminum label on it that has a number engraved on it, and that makes my job 100 times easier. I just finished a job. Well, I didn't just, we did it back in November. We relocated like 60 trees from Port Everglades in Fort Lauderdale to around like 15 different parks all around Fort Lauderdale. And it was one of the most complicated things we did, because the company basically reached out to the park supervisor for Fort Lauderdale and said like, hey, we have all these trees we're getting rid of. Does anyone want anything? And everyone was like, sure, I'll take palm tree 241, 117, 69, and 4. And so that was like every day getting there, finding those numbers, loading them on one truck, taking them to that park. And that was just a jumble back and forth. I've also had the issue where I get to, like this job, for instance, my first time out there was on Monday, and there's not a single thing labeled. I had to go out there, look for, and I'll show you these. Yeah, I had to look for everything. This building right here is actually like an abandoned warehouse. There were maybe like 3 homeless people living in here. And the mahoganies, all this these 4 mahoganies that we had to root prune, there's like, what do you call it? Florida holly, maybe like 20 foot thick along this whole section here. And we literally had to like cut down holly with a machete just to find these mahoganies to root prune them. So that is the harder part. And to answer your question, I think for this job, the way that I'm going to do it is the trees, I'm definitely going to label them and make sure that each tree goes to its specific spot, like the mahoganies. As far as the sables go, I'm just going to pull them all out and then just go plant them, because there's 80 of them. And I really don't think anyone's going to mind if one sable's there and one sable's not there. The trees, yeah, the trees, we'll try to keep them in their intended spots, just because they're specific oak trees. And does that answer your question?
Yeah, so it seems like you just have to have a good knowledge of the jurisdiction having authority that you're working under.
Correct.
As well as the species.
The easiest thing to do would be to request a pre-construction meeting with the city. Request a pre-con meeting, or even call in like a job check inspection and just ask the inspector, hey, there's 80 sable ponds here. Like, you know, do you really mind which sables go where? And I'm pretty sure I don't know anyone that'll say like, no, make sure each one goes exactly where it needs to go. Because even in this group of sables here, it doesn't really say which number goes where. You know, it's letting you know we want these number sables here, but it's not telling you which sable is which one.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. So again, and my thing is always developing a relationship with your inspector, or if you're an inspector, developing a relationship with the contractor where you have what your expectations are and you let them know. And there's always some leeway because nothing can be done perfectly. But pretty much, yeah. Yeah, like these two mahoganies that are relocates, we'll make sure these go here. But sable palms, yeah, we'll probably end up just moving them wherever. Any other questions? Nope. Last thing we're gonna review, which might or might not affect you guys, but I know it's gonna be on the test and I wanna go over it with you guys. You guys are going to have to look at irrigation plans. And I don't know if anyone's worked with irrigation plans before. If you've never seen an irrigation plan and you look at one, you're gonna be like, what the heck am I looking at? If you've seen them, they're a lot easier to look at. We'll start on page 1. Same thing, scale bar, north arrow, drawing number. Here they have a simple chart letting you know the sleeving schedule. So if the pipe size is a 3/4 inch pipe, requires a 2-inch sleeve. They'll give you separate sleeve labels. So if they have a sleeve that says 12-inch, 6-inch, 2-inch, they mean to install one 12-inch, one 6-inch, and one 2-inch. Let's look at, I'll go to the back first and show you.
I have a
guys.
question on that if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
I actually do quite a bit of irrigation, but by sleeve you mean just under concrete,
Yep.
some kind of concrete hardscaping.
Correct. Yeah. Sleeving is usually just under sidewalks, under concrete, under hardscape.
Yeah. Okay.
The rule of thumb is usually if it's double the size of whatever pipe you got to put in. So 8, 16, 6, 12, 4, 8. And that's for anyone that doesn't know anything about irrigation, when the road is being made and you know you have to cross a pipe underneath your road, what you'll typically do is if you have a 4-inch pipe that goes, if your main line is 4 inches, you want to dig through their lime rock, underneath their lime rock, put in an 8-inch pipe so they could put their lime rock over it, compress it, build their road over it, and then you can come back and squeeze in or, put in your 4-inch pipe in that 8-inch. So it's like a protective pipe that you're putting just to hold the place of that main line and protect it from anything breaking it. For anyone that doesn't.
I have another question on that, Christopher.
Go ahead.
This probably isn't anything to do with your test material, but it's just real life practical examples. Since your company mainly does landscaping, I'm assuming irrigation. Do you guys make sure you have somebody on site when they're doing, let's say, road prep and paving, just to make sure it's in there? Or do you try to make sure that's that contractor's responsibility?
No, we always, as Dixie Landscape goes, we always include sleeving in our contracts. It's probably the part that demands the most communication in any part of the project, because you're usually not there every day because there's nothing ready for a landscaper to do. But it's, as soon as I get a contract for a job, I try to be out there that same week just to introduce myself if it's someone I haven't worked with, or see who's running the job if I've worked with them before, and and exchange contact information. And they'll know, oh, we're going to be working on the east parking lot the 18th. So you have to know 18th. All right. We have to check for sleeving, and there's certain things that you can request or see if they're in your scope. So here's just an example. If this parking lot was brand new and they were building it, and I knew I had a sleeve that had to go across this roadway, I'd say, let me know when you're doing the parking lot, and stake out the island for me. So they'd stake out this island, maybe a corner here, here, and here. And then my guys would come before they put their lime rock down and throw the sleeve wherever it marks it on the plan. So that part is just all communication between the contractor and the general contractor. So here's a 2-inch sleeve. I believe this is all existing roadway. I don't know if they're gonna redo this, but if they don't, we run into that issue a lot where, especially on like redo jobs, where irrigation goes where it doesn't, sometimes you'll have to cut the asphalt and trench it out, put your sleeve in, and then they have to patch it up. That's just the way it goes sometimes. Or you can jack and bore it underneath the roadway, but that's really expensive. So here is an irrigation schedule, and it might look like gibberish to some people. Here is, oh crap, hold on. Here's where they will spec out the company that they want, the manufacturer, the model, the description. They want Rainbird 1800 series SAM NPR heads. They want a turf spray 6-inch pop-up sprinkler. So they're letting you know it's buried underground and it'll pop up 6 inches when it comes out, with coal molded wiper seal. These are just all different things. And then here you have the nozzles. Some people don't specify nozzles. Some people make you figure it out for yourself. But if it has a 12-foot Q, it's a corner that shoots out 12 inches. You have a T, you have a half that shoots out 12 feet, I'm sorry. 12 feet, here you have a TQ and a full, which is shooting 12. You have 15, 8, more 15s, 4, 6, 8. So this is just letting you know. Here you have strips. So strips are when you have maybe like a 2-foot wide area of grass. You need to put an end strip that just shoots out a little thing. This is letting you know what nozzles they want on which heads. Here you have bubblers. So here you have Rainbird flood bubblers. Here you have Rainbird 5000. These look like rotors. And as a contractor, one thing I hate the most is you have to do submittal documents. So when you get a contract, general contractor will always ask you for submittal information. So you have to go on Rainbird's website, look up the 5006 PL PC FC LA model, download the submittal documents that they request, and then submit it for each single thing. They're letting you know here the radius of these rotors and how many gallons per minute they shoot out. So this is, and the PSI, which is pounds per square inch of water. So here they're letting you know a lot of information, which usually they don't need to. They're letting you know exactly how many heads there are of each kind. You rarely see that. They're letting you know how many pounds per square inch each head requires. Here they're showing you valves. So they want the Rainbird PEB valves, 1 inch, 1.5 inch, 2 inch plastic industrial valves. There's 30 of them. They're letting you know exactly which controller they want. They want a 44 station capable controller. They want the ESP8 with 3 modules. So each module adds 4 stations to it. They want a rain sensor. Here you have a pump. So irrigation craft centrifugal pump, 5 horsepower. Pay attention to this because when you're bidding a job, when you're looking at plans, as a plans examiner or a landscape inspector, you might not worry about the pump size, but you really never know. Here they've even gone to the length of letting you know how many feet of main line they have, how many feet of lateral lines they have, how many feet of sleeving they have. As an estimator, this is like your birthday because you just use their numbers, because every contractor who's bidding this job is bidding it off of these numbers. They want to know apples to apples. What are they providing you with? Here you have, and this is important, this is the valve markers, the valve callouts. Here they're letting you know the valve number, the valve size, and the valve flow. So this is letting you know this is zone 1, the valve size, which here we know there's 1 inch, 1.5, and 2 inches, and the valve flow. So depending on how many heads this has, how many PSI, how many gallons per minute, how many the flow will be. So just to give you guys a quick example, if it's valve 1, that's a 1 inch valve, and it's got these 4 rotors on it that give you 1.77 gallons per minute, you multiply 1.77 times 4, and that would let you know how many gallons per minute that valve is putting out. Common notes are existing irrigation zones to remain, modify and or adjust to provide 100% coverage with 50% overlap. That's a typical note. In every city that you go to, they want to have overlapping coverage. Pump shall require 463 phase connection. Controller will require, so they're letting you know the electrical. System shall have 4 separate hydro zones, shrubs, turf rotor, and bubblers. So this is a new kind of plan that people are designing now. They have zones specified for each specific thing. So they're letting you know they're gonna have a valve that's only gonna water shrubs. They're gonna have a valve that's only gonna water grass, valve that's only gonna water grass with rotors, and then valves dedicated completely to bubblers. It makes it harder to install. It makes it a lot easier to maintain. After a year, if you're done with your bubblers, you simply shut those valves off, remove the time from the timer, and now you don't have any bubblers anymore instead of having them mixed in the system. So we'll just go, here are more details.
Hey, Chris, I have a question again on that.
Go ahead.
Okay, so for the typical contractor, it's not our responsibility to figure out if the pump is appropriate to whatever heads or rotors are put on there. Let's say you have a 2 horsepower pump and you got 10 rotors and 10 pop-ups. Chances are it may not be able to actually physically support that many gallons per minute. That's an engineer. That's well beyond something,
Yeah.
right? I would assume that it's not necessarily it's the inspector's job or the contractor's job. You're just doing what somebody else has supposedly mathematically calculated.
Correct. And that happens all the time. Not as much as you would like it to happen. But you're right. Do people design plans that don't work is basically your question, right? And the answer is yeah. They could put way too many heads on a zone and there's not enough pressure. And there's going to be areas that are going to start drying out of sod, because there's not enough pressure because they put too many heads. Or the pump could burn out because it's a 2 horsepower pump supplying a giant system. I just had a job where we had a 10 horsepower pump and it was spec'd with a 15-gallon rust inhibitor tank. And so that pump was draining that rust inhibitor tank probably every week. And nowhere on the contract did it say that we had to be there weekly to refill that rust inhibitor tank. So, they started complaining, why is there rust everywhere on the site? Because it's drawing from a well. Oh, we have rust stains. Why is this tank always empty? And so your answer as a contractor is it's installed per plan. It's you're installing what you're contracted for, which is the plan. Oh, you want to change it to a 200 gallon tank? Oh, that change order. Your zones don't work. You need to upgrade your pump. You need to upgrade your valve size. It's installed per plan. You want us to change it? Change order. I have most of our foremen. They've been irrigation foremen for like 20 plus years, and they can kind of see a plan right off the bat and let you know if it's going to work or not. I know most of my foremen, I could say, how many heads can I put on a 2-inch valve? And he'll say, what's the pump? 10 horsepower pump. And he'll say 50 to 60 heads, depending on the nozzles. So they know. And they add heads too if they think coverage isn't going to work. We lose a little more money doing that, but it keeps the reputation of our company.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Christopher, I have a question too.
Go ahead.
So you kind of said like with the sleeves and like all the lateral pipes, like it was kind of like a birthday gift. They figured that all out for you. And
Yep.
that kind of goes with the like the plant counts too. Like, hey, we need like 1,200 of Green Island ficus. Well, you can't really go by what that plan says because ultimately you got to count up. I mean, that architect could make a mistake on any one of those numbers, and you're kind of responsible for not reviewing the plan and just bidding off his numbers, where you could get kind of, you know,
Yeah. No.
get
You're
screwed in the long end, right?
Yeah. No. You're 1,000% right. When I started as an intern at Dixie in estimating, they literally put me there 8 hours a day doing a takeoff on the plans. Here's your plant list that they gave you. Count every single call out for Green Island ficus. And I guarantee you 7 out of 10 plans were wrong. It's just the way it goes.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was kind of getting at. Like, if everybody was, you know, under the perception, like, hey, the plant is the the plan is the Bible. You know, this is what we're bidding. Like, I kind of wanted to let everybody know, not really, man. You got to really go through that and take the time, like you said, 8 hours. You know,
Yep.
reviewing a
And,
plan. I mean, it could be 12 hours, it could be 4 hours, depending on what size. But I guess as us bidding these projects, we have to make sure that, you know, this architect is correct in what he's doing, because nobody's, you know, 100% perfect, and we're going to catch stuff that he missed. And
yep.
I guess that was my thing. But all right, cool. Sounds good.
Yeah, no, you're right. We it's like a running joke in our company because I was an estimator, and as an estimator, I made my count of estimating errors of like missed trees, missed shrubs, and then the project managers would always come back and be like, "Hey, you know, estimating error. You didn't bid these 15 trees. You didn't see them on the plan." And
Yeah, that just comes out of your paycheck, though, right?
yeah. No, so I mean, as an estimator, you know, the more pressure you're under and the faster you need to turn around with a bid, the more room there are for errors. If they had all the time in the world, they would do takeoffs on every plan and make sure everything is as good as it gets. You know, and to your point too, it could also kind of screw over a contractor and getting rewarded a job. And that's happened to us as well, where we'll bid a plan where we noticed, you know, maybe 20 oak trees that weren't called out on the landscape plan on the plant list, but they're on the plan. But another contractor just bid the plant list. And so 20 oaks by $500 is 10 grand. Their bid is 10 grand cheaper than ours because they didn't catch those. And,
Yeah.
and in that case, there's not much we can really do about it. You know, are they gonna come back later and request a change order, or they're gonna eat it? We've had to eat. I mean, we eat money all the time, and it's a balance.
Yeah, I've been down that road too, and unfortunately, they don't call you back like, "Hey, why were you 10,000 more?" Well, because I noticed that you guys missed, you know, a bunch of, you know, oaks, what have you. So, all right, thanks for clearing that up.
No, and we get bids that they'll send us a bid the day before, and they say we really need this by tomorrow. And is that estimator gonna pull an all-nighter, making, you know, $40,000 a year to get an accurate bid? No, he's gonna look at the plant list and get it as close as he can. But yeah, just to continue, here you have details, pretty much of anything that they spec'd out on that plant on the irrigation list. They should have a detail for it. So here's a pop-up spray on a fixed riser next to a curb, a pop-up bubbler at a plant pit, how they want the controller mounted, the valves, irrigation trenching, piping beneath pavement. So here is the how your sleeves look. Pay attention always to what kind of pipe. So they want Schedule 40 PVC pipe for the sleeves. It could be Schedule 40. It could be Class 160. There's different sizes of pipe. Here they have the boxes for the valve boxes. They have the backflows. And then we'll just take a look at the plan itself real quick. Yeah, so these new plans that people are making, they have dedicated zones to bubblers. So what you'll do is when you're installing it, you got this valve and you'll find the line coming out of the valve. It's a 2-inch line leaving the valve. That's a 2-inch valve, zone 20, 40.8 gallons per minute. And then it lets you know, this 2-inch pipe changes to an 1.5 inches. It has all these bubblers, still 1.5 inches. And they'll go telling you the measurements and breakouts. This loop right here, when lines intersect each other, so that there's no confusion, they'll typically loop it over. Just so you know, this line coming from here isn't part of these bubblers. It's coming over here, and it's these spray heads. So I don't think you guys will get too many questions on irrigation. Some things you gotta look at, just always look at the details, always look at the sleeving, know where your indexing valve is, or your valve. Follow the details. The scale, I mean, that's like the most important thing, scale in North Arrow. Sleeves, irrigation. Here you can find your pump location. So here's your pump, rain sensor. You can see it's drawing out of the lake. Point of connection right here in the middle of the lake. Main line and direct burial. Yeah, so irrigation plans, they're simple, they're confusing. They'll always show easements as well. I saw one in the other page. You have a 10-foot gas easement. They'll give you some measurements here and there. Let me just go over this to make sure I covered everything for you guys. Yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I think we're looking good. You have your landscape plans. You got your tree disposition plans. Look at your zoning, look at your sizing, your spacing. Look at your existing trees, what's gonna happen to them. Look at impervious, the square footage of the building, 8-foot clear trunk shall be maintained. Just different things. And that's pretty much it. Do you guys have any questions for me?
I have one.
Go ahead.
Okay, on the caliper of the trees, it doesn't specify DBH, so that automatically 6 inches above grade for anything under 4 inch, right?
Correct. If it's DBH, so here you go. It says DBH. So if it says caliper is 6 inches above the ground for anything up to 4 inches and 12 inches above the ground for anything above 4. If it says DBH, then it is DBH. So it is diameter of breast height, which I think is like 4.5 or 5 feet above the ground. But caliper is caliper, and then DBH.
Okay, so that only the mahogany they're calling DBH.
Yep, that's the only one that they want to look at, the DBH on that.
Yeah, 2.5. Okay.
Yep. And then one question you might get asked is like if you have a multi-trunk crepe myrtle that wants a 3-inch caliper, how do you find the 3-inch caliper on a multi-stem crepe myrtle?
Isn't the total sum?
Yep. Yep. So that's just you know, if you got 3 1-inch stem,
There.
3-inch caliper.
Right.
You said the tallest stem, right?
No.
No, it's the sum of all the stems for a multi.
Oh, the sum. Okay.
Yep. 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 Anyone else have any questions, guys? I lost the chat window, so I don't really know if anyone said anything in the chat window.
Hey, Chris, Susan.
Yep.
Hey, well, I just lost my, is there a list of competencies that we need to know from these plans for the exam?
I have the review questions. There is Kevin told me not to give them to you guys, but if you were paying attention, I guarantee you will ace the plan review part of this exam.
All right, thank you.
No problem. Just if you guys, some key things, if you have a pen and paper to write down, I'll just give you key notes that I made sure to go over with you guys. Zoning and code requirements is one. Finding your scale and your north arrow. Finding your plant list, your size, your spacing, your shrubs, your trees, tree dispositions, knowing relocates, removals, and remains. Being able to find utilities and overhead lines on a plan. Looking at irrigation plans, being able to just find where the pump is, identify how many gallons a zone is going to provide, what size sleeves are, and looking at details. That if you guys study those points, or if you feel comfortable with those points, I'm sure you guys will do great.
So overall, the answers are going to be on the blueprint.
Yeah, everything you're gonna need is gonna be on the plan. I can give you guys like a sample question. Let me see if I can. So like a sample question will be something as simple as how far from an FPL box do your plants need to be? And so you'd go to your planting details and you'd find the FPL box and find the detail for it. Another one might be how far apart do your Green Island ficus need to be planted? And you would go to your plant list. You find it. You'd find your Green Island ficus, and you'd look at the spacing of it. Just being able to know how many trees are being relocated, how many are staying, knowing on like the street side, on the street trees, knowing how far these street trees need to be planted. That could be a sample question, and that would be typically in this box that they provide you, that they need perimeter landscape strips. So they need one every 30 linear feet, one understory tree. So look, just being able to identify things. Everything is going to be pretty simple. You know what's going to happen to tree number 447? What happens to it? That's as easy as going to the tree disposition plan, finding it on the list, and seeing what happens to it. Or, for example, the irrigation plan. If they say, where is your water source, could be a question. And the answer could be on the south side of the building, on the west side of the retention pond, on the north side of the building. These could all be answers. And so finding that source and then just finding the answer that you think is right. So for here, looks like it's on the north side of the lake. That would be my guess. And that's it.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Just out of curiosity, in some of these parking lots, you'll see they'll plant a large caliper tree and a very narrow island with curbing. Do they use any of those like root zone control collars in parking lots to make the roots go deep down below the asphalt?
Yes, what you are referring to, sir, is root barrier.
Root
And-
barrier, that's it.
Yep. If a project calls for root barrier, or what we've been doing lately is structural soil, depending on the city that you're in. They'll always call for it, and that'll also be in the details. Let's look in here if you see any. See, I don't see any details for root barrier.
Is that typically like a plastic liner like?
No.
Yep. There's different kinds of root barrier. The most common is the UB root barrier, which come in 24, 36-inch plastic panels that they all kind of like each end will slide in together and they'll link together. And those will, let me see. They'll have it spec'd out. Let me see if I can pull it up for you guys. Yeah, if you guys can see this. Can you guys see this?
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is the typical root barrier. This is probably the most popular one. And like you said, if it's called out, here's like a detail showing deep root barrier. It'll call it out. It'll show you where to install it. It's typically installed around utilities or, like you said, at the edge of a sidewalk.
Water mains?
Water mains, yeah. If you're within 5 foot of a water main, it'll call for root barrier. Here you can see it's in between the curb and the sidewalk.
Yep.
Here's some insulation details. They also have a root barrier that is with chemicals. I don't know the exact name of it. It looks like this. And this root barrier is bio barrier. Yep.
Yeah.
I haven't used this in a long time. People kind of stopped using it. It's more, I don't know exactly what chemical it has, but you have to handle it with gloves. And essentially, I think the roots, when they reach this fabric, they kind of just die off. It's not as effective as the plastic one because I think over time the chemicals kind of fade and then eventually the roots will just penetrate it anyways.
Is this some sort of like pre-emergent or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. I think I've only used it once in my life, and I don't think I've ever seen it spec'd out. And then for if anyone else wants to see the new thing that is being used for Lauderdale is requiring it a lot. It is structural soil. It's essentially just like a dirty rock. It's like 57 rock tossed in with like muck, and you install it underneath sidewalks, underneath like patios. This is Silva cells. This is something else. But structural soil, when they're getting ready to do the sidewalk, depending on the plan, you'd excavate it out 30 inches and install this structural soil. And the theory behind that is over time, the water, the muck will like deteriorate, leaving gaps in between the gravel for the roots to grow into. So instead of what happens with just lime rock, as you guys know, is, let me see if I can find a good image. The root will hit like the lime rock and then it'll go upwards, and then the only space it can find is between asphalt and like the lime rock base. And that's why you always get those cracks in the road and lifted road. What the structural soil is hoping to do is eventually provide air holes underneath it so that they can wiggle their way into the structural soil.
And that's been proven to work?
It's been proven, I think so.
Okay.
If you ask the guy who invented it, I'm sure he'd say yes. I haven't been around long enough to see like anything that I've installed really if it works or not. And I'm telling you, I have, the last time I used it is this job in Fort Lauderdale, and we planted oak trees in like maybe a 3-foot area in between a curb and a sidewalk. which we tried to get out of it because we knew it was a horrible idea, but they insisted that because there's structural soil there, it would be a good idea. But yeah, we'll see if it works. I'll let you know in 20 years when I go back to that job site.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
I've seen it used like all the time. Every time they plant anything, it's structural soil first,
And
yeah,
it's
they use it all the
super
time.
expensive.
Yeah,
And it's really just dirty rock. But it's the one thing I really like, which is really expensive, is silva cells. And this is just, if you guys ever have time, do some research on it. It's essentially like suspended pavement. They put these cells underneath any pavement, and then they fill it up with clean soil and then cover it. So then you'd put like your sidewalk over it, and it like gives the tree space to grow underneath. It's really cool. It's really expensive. They're doing it a lot like on the beach and something like that. And it's rated enough that cars could drive on it. That's something you guys could check out. I mean, I know.
Cool.
Yep. Any other questions, guys?
Christopher, I had another question. As far as like when you're excavating to plant a tree, or as far as like putting sod down, sometimes they'll say, hey, you need to put down X amount of 50-50 soil or like a clean backfill. Is there anybody that actually does that? Like,
That's
I mean, who checks that, number one? I mean, everyone's got to be competitive and cut corners somewhere, but does somebody actually go out there and say, yeah, there's 4 inches of soil, let's lay the floor tam, or hey, yeah, this is excavated, and we'll backfill this with clean soil. Does anybody do that? How do you guys get away with that, I guess is my thing. Or you can't speak about it.
No, I'll speak about it.
Okay.
As a contractor, I think you have to know where to cut, when you can cut corners and when you can't. Sunrise, Peggy and Bill, if you know Peggy and Bill, I have to request inspections when I excavate out a planting island in Sunrise. Pompano, I think Pompano, any planting island adjacent to a building has to be excavated 30 inches and backfilled.
So when you can kind of like get away with it and when you have to actually do it. All right. One more question. What'd you bid that job at?
This one?
I'm just kidding.
We're contracted. You can't take it.
Yeah, I hear you. All right. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate all the info.
No problem, guys. Here's just, usually there's more details, but here's your detail. 12 inches of planting soil mix is required around and beneath the root ball of all trees and palms, and about 1 cubic yard per 50. So yeah, in this case, I'm pretty sure Wade in Pompano is going to tell his inspector, like, make sure they're digging out everything 12 inches. And not to throw any shade at Pompano, but people bid jobs a lot higher when they're in Pompano because the amount of inspections you have to pass there. This will be my first job this year in Pompano, but we have another project manager that just finished, and he said like he would excavate the island, call an inspection, request the dirt, call an inspection. They wanted to see the dirt. Backfill the island, request an inspection. Lay out the shrubs, not even plant them yet. Lay them out, request an inspection, and then plant them. So
how do you calculate that into your bids?
You can't.
It's very, very time consuming to do it that way. I mean, for anybody else, I mean, I could do the job 4 times as fast as you could, right? I mean, calling all the inspections and this and that, it just prolongs everything. So how do you calculate that kind of time involved with just laying out a simple island?
What we've done, and this has happened, I've been at Dixie Landscape for 5 years, and I've seen it just in the time that I've been there. But it really kind of just comes from communication between project management and estimating. if you bid a job for 100 grand and when you finish that job, you realize you had 120 grand in costs just because you had to have a crew there waiting 6 hours for an inspector. So that kind of just the communication establishes the pricing. So we've had meetings about it where we say we have to increase the pricing in Pompano, and the way we do it is add $50 to every tree. So the same tree we would sell in Hialeah for $200, we're selling for $300 in Pompano, because you have to account for that. It's going to take a lot longer.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, that's how we do it. Here's a interesting note. All sod areas indicated on the planting plan shall receive, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, but palmetto sod. That's not typical. And honestly, St. Augustine palmetto, let's see what the plant list calls for. Because I guarantee you it probably calls for St. Augustine. Yeah, St. Augustine. So, that's palmetto's more expensive.
I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
Seaweed soil, or like a seaweed compost type thing. We use that a lot. Is there any research on the
seaweed
on that stuff? Yeah, because I work for the city of Fort Lauderdale. We use like rakes and stuff to pick up seaweed along the beach, and we throw it. We have like a big pile of seaweed, and it turns into sand after a while, or soil, and it works great. Like as a fill.
Wow, I've never.
Yeah.
I think
it'd be super alkaline, but I've never tested the soil, but we'll throw that down before we throw like some sod down or something, and oh my god, it works great.
Wow, I've never. You're saying you're doing that in Fort Lauderdale?
Yeah, Fort Lauderdale.
Are you? Is it with First TV Inspector or with?
No, I work with a. Well, I'm the pest control tech, but sometimes I do some of the landscaping stuff or whatever. And if we need a fill or whatever, we use the ton of seaweed soil that we have or whatever, and it just works great.
Are you referring to like sargassum at the beach?
I'm not sure what I'm referring to, but
the regular seaweed that washes up on the beach.
Yeah, that seaweed
that they rake up.
Yeah, we rake it up, and we have a huge pile. Yeah, eventually it turns into like soil.
Compost seaweed. And
yeah, it's like a compost.
I guess the salt must leach out of it eventually.
Yeah, that was my concern originally, but I guess it does, because it works great. It smells bad, but it works great.
That's pretty cool. I've
never heard of that.
Yeah.
So do they actually send you guys out to rake up the seaweed?
Yeah. We have our own crews that rake the seaweed, and they go and dump it in the huge seaweed pile we have in our own little dump or whatever at one of the parks. And to get rid of some of that pile or whatever, the huge pile we have back there, every time we need to plant something or backfill or something, we use that, and I haven't seen any any problems or issues yet.
Is it this? It turns into like a dust like this?
No, it's actually like just soil.
Seaweed?
Yeah, it's like soil. Like it turns into like soil.
That's the picture you can click on.
Wow, that's interesting. I'm actually gonna do some research about that.
Yeah, it could be a new
you guys
breakthrough in some science or something. But
you need to hurry up and patent that so you can sell it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Maybe that could save you guys some money in the future.
Oh, look at that. I just found the group chat. Can we have any handout on this? I don't have any handout. I think, Diana, you probably asked that question. I don't have any handout. I'm just kind of teaching you guys how to look at plans. The root barrier question was a great question. And if you guys really If you really want, I could find a job real quick that has some root barrier on it to show you guys what it would look like.
Much easier pre-construction than post-construction, that root
Yeah.
barrier.
Oh yeah. Here you go. I've got this job in Plantation that's got some root barrier on it. Landscape.
Okay.
All right, so here, I'll pull up this drawing real quick. In root barrier. It doesn't show up on this landscape one, but this one, this plan has landscape. Let's see if we can find it. I know for a fact this one has. Usually it'll just show up as like a dashed line. Here's the detail for it. Root barrier. Install root barrier where trees, palms are planted within 10 foot of paved surface. UB24, that's the one we pulled up the plastic. This will be the detail for it. See if I could find it on the plans. This plan's in I think it shows on the civil plans in this project. Site plan. See this. Oh, here you go. It should be somewhere here. No? I know it requires it around these planters. I don't know which drawing it's on. Here you go. Root barrier. It tells you the detail on the landscape plan, and then here it just shows you it has a dashed line. So all this has to have root barrier. Most of the time, I'm going to say 90% of the time, it's on the landscape plan. These guys put it on their hardscape plan, which when you're bidding a job, you know, most of the time as a landscape contractor, you don't even look at the hardscape plan because unless you're bidding the hardscape, this is something that could easily be missed on a bid just because it's on a different plan.
Hey, Chris, one quick question.
Yep.
I know Dixie used to do a lot of work in Miami Beach, if I'm not mistaken. Did you happen to do that job in Surfside where they installed these gigantic?
Gigantic what? You're still there, you cut out. I don't hear you. But the answer to that question is no. I don't work in Miami Beach. We have another project manager. The way Dixie's kind of broken up is each manager handles like a different area. We have a guy that does all of like Homestead up into Doral. We have a guy that does like Doral all the way up to Broward. We have a guy that does the whole beach, everything on the East Coast. I do a lot of Broward jobs. They give me a lot of hard jobs for some reason. I don't like it.
Okay.
What was you cut out? What they planted large trees?
They planted, like in Surfside, like around 90, like 100th Street, 99th Street, there's a big, huge condo, and they planted these gigantic banyan ficus trees with huge buttresses, and they were heavily pruned back, I guess, for transportation, and they were craned in, and the branches were like strapped with ratchet ties and everything, and it's just massive. Unfortunately, they suffered a lot of dieback. I haven't been by there in about 6 months, but they started sprouting out new foliage. But it was quite a feat, and I just wondered if Dixie had done that job or not.
Not personally, I'm not sure. The coolest thing I've seen while working at Dixie's a giant banyan tree that we had to relocate, and we cut it in half down the middle and transported it in 2 halves, and then planted it and just put both halves back together, and it survived transportation like that.
Oh, wow. And how's it look now?
It looks great.
Wow.
It looks great. Yeah. Yeah, that's the craziest thing I've ever seen working at Dixie.
Okay.
But yeah, guys, anyone have any other questions?
One last one from me.
Go ahead.
Field adjustments.
Okay.
How do you handle that?
Field adjustments. That is, it's a good question. It's a more of like we're kind of going back to just like your relationship with the inspector, and that happens 100% of the time. Field adjustments.
Does it happen just with the inspector or also with the architect?
It happens on site, and maybe the architect's involved like 10% of the time, like little things. There's a light pole right here that didn't show on the plan, so this tree's got to move over because it's right. That's what I see happens 90% of the time. It's like the light poles are in the same spot as the trees, so you got to move the trees over. Field adjustments, things up against like houses. I've had jobs where we planted a tree 3 feet from a house, and the inspector came out and said like, oh no, this, too close to the house. You got to move it out at least 7 feet or whatever they say. And at that point, you're not going to argue. You kind of just want to pass your inspection. So you say, all right, we'll move it.
So what happens? I guess it was more like 30 trees.
You have to find like a new spot for 30 trees.
I mean, the architect, hey, he spec'd out whatever it is. I don't want to go 30, but like, hey, 15 trees. And you can just tell like, hey, this isn't going to work out. So who do you reach out to as far as like, hey, I got 15 trees sitting here. I need to get them in the ground, within 2 days. So how do I, make it work where the architect's okay with it, the city's okay with it, and, you're okay with it. And you're under the gun because you got trees that need
they're going to die.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So how do you do that? I mean, do you just kind of do it yourself and say, hey, as a, landscape contractor and arborist, this is going to work, and that's not going to work. Slap my hand.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I don't think there's like a single answer for it. I think it's more just like a case by case basis, where, I've been yelled at personally by GCs for like calling an architect and asking them a question. And I got yelled at like, who are you to call the architect? You need to send an RFI. And each GC kind of has their own processes. If it's something on site like that, like life or death for a tree, my gut says like plant it temporarily somewhere. And if you got to move it, you got to move it. If you have the time, email the architect and copy the GC and ask for direction. If you don't, plant it where it calls, and you're following the plan. And if they change it, it's a change order.
Yeah, but some of those plans call for like, hey, you need to reach out to the architect, correct? I mean,
Yeah.
not necessarily the GC, but the architect is the one that, created this, and you need to get with him. And I've been under that situation too, where the GC's like you said, hey, why are you getting him involved? Well, he's the one that put this together. So I just wanted to know kind of how you handled.
I think
Yeah,
I would
this
always,
light post is here. I can't plant that oak right next to the light post. So what do you want me to do?
yeah, I'd always run it by the project manager of the company that hired us, because
Okay.
because they hired you, so you're technically working for them. I would say, like, I got this issue. It's a 911. I'd put it in an email just to cover your back about it. I delivered these trees and they can't be planted. They're gonna die. I need immediate direction in an email after you talk to them. And they might say, like, we'll call the architect, or you call the architect. But I'd always, we have the saying in our office, like, cover your ass. So you have to send it in an email. These trees are gonna die unless we get immediate direction, and we can't be held responsible.
Yeah.
If you know the architect, like, if it's, this job, I'm sure this job isn't gonna happen. This is probably like a 3-month job or something like that. So I'm sure by then I'll have spoken to the architect a couple times with the inspector, and it'll be as easy as just making a phone call and not like a huge plan revision. It also depends on the city. Like in Sunrise, you can make field adjustments, and then at the end of the job, they'll say, well, give us a plan revision with all the adjustments that were made. And so they need that by the architect. But yeah, it's a case-by-case basis. I would always, though, like I said, run it by the project manager or the superintendent, because they are the ones that hired you.
Right.
And if the trees die, they would be the only people to pay you.
Gotcha. All
Yep.
right.
Anyone else got anything? Nope.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
No problem, guys.
All right, guys. See, next week is going to be general knowledge. So thank you very much. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, guys. My email, if you guys want to jot it down, it's Chris, K-R-I-S with a K, at dixielandscape.com. And if you guys ever have any questions with a plan review or anything like that, feel free to reach out. I'm always glad to take a look, let you guys know. That's it.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank
Swing
you.
by
Good
that
night.
job tomorrow and make sure you're backfilling those holes correctly.
Yeah.
And use seaweed.
Yeah, use added that before someone else becomes rich off your idea.
And Chris, it was Chris at Dixie Landscape?
Yep, K-R-I-S at dixielandscape.com.
Okay.
If you fail your test, please do not email me. It's not my fault. All right, guys. See you guys later.
All right. Thank you, Chris.
No problem.